Everybody, it's Dana. I am trying something new again today. You may have seen a couple of spit and sputter starts with new technology, but we're working on it. So today I want to chat a little bit about feeding your senior dog. There are several videos that I have out on my YouTube channel that talk about nutrition. I do have one about senior dogs and sort of the things that we need to think about when feeding a dog that is aging. It can be different, and they may need supplementation, and they may need different nutrient, to really help make sure we're optimizing the diet for their particular health needs. But I wanted to share with you sort of what's going on with my dog. And I saw a question recently from one of the members of the group where they were asking about, what can you do when your dog sort of quits eating? So my dogs, and I do this, I look over where they're sitting on the couch. My dogs eat the Volhard Dog Nutrition. And one of the things that I love about this diet is I get to rotate the protein around. So I can do multiple days of a particular protein and then switch it up. Or I could vary every day if I wanted to. I do not have to do that frequency. Most people don't. Most of us do like 5 days a week of just ground hamburger and a day of fish and a day of dairy. But I can rotate turkey and pork, more fish. I could do a whole bunch of things. We could do chicken. I'm not a big fan of chicken. I will do it occasionally, like maybe once a quarter. It just varies, right? But the beauty of rotating those proteins around does a couple of things in terms of helping to make sure we're keeping the vitamin, mineral, amino acid, nutrient makeup sort of rotated and balanced, for lack of a better word. So let's talk about that term balance for a minute. We're not, for the most part, as a home prepared feeder, going to balance the bowl. Okay? So if you're doing home prepared food, I want you to aim for it, but I want you to aim for it across like a week or so, right? Because it's awfully hard to get the macronutrient details in every specific bowl, which is why the rotation and the variance is a really good thing. With the Volhard, certainly I have the right balance of the base mix, and I add the right amount of protein to it. That helps me keep things in balance with that diet. So I don't want to throw it off a whole lot when I'm looking at like the NDF2. However, if I move into something like the AM/PM diet, then I get to rotate my veggies around. I get to rotate my probiotics around. Not that sometimes I can't add additional probiotic or additional veggie or whatever to the NDF2. I can. But with a diet like AM/PM, I get to really customize and move into that Chinese medicine theory, the 5-element theory that is, and really focus on what that individual animal may need. So real benefit, in my opinion, in being able to do that. Whereas if you're buying some of these other freeze-dried mixes or these rolled foods, it's a blend of stuff, and and you don't get a lot of variance, right? You might be able to vary a little with each purchase, but you might not get the frequent variance that we're talking about. I have information on my blog about my opinions on those other types of foods. So I tend to fall into the recommendation of either Volhard if you're looking for the convenience of it all, or making your own recipe following some specific guidelines that aren't really difficult to do. You just have to do a little math, a little thinking, and a little planning, which is, I didn't want to do that. So, anyway, I digress. Back to the senior. So, my own dog, Howie, has been eating NDF2 for, I don't know, a really long time, maybe close to 8 or 9 years now. Maybe not quite that long. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He's 17. He has gotten into this little thing now where in the mornings he doesn't want to eat his breakfast. So we eat twice a day. And in the mornings he'll root around, sniff around his food, and walk away from it. So the fact that he was walking away from it said to me he doesn't want to. It's not that he doesn't like it, but for whatever reason he wasn't ready to eat it. So I've actually started spoiling him a little bit. And I'll put the food up on the couch, which is where his spot is. And you've seen the video of him trying to cover it up. And then eventually he will eat it. Sometimes he's eating part of it, and then other times all of it. The times that he eats just a little bit of it or that he has completely walked away, I just save it. And then around lunchtime, I heat it up with a little hot water, hand it back to him, and he eats the whole thing, right? He eats the whole thing. So them walking away from food or turning their nose up at food may not mean I hate that ingredient in the bowl. It just may mean I don't want to eat it right now. And that could be, just sort of a slowdown of the body, and he needs to wake up and to go outside and do his thing first. Little old man kind of stuff, right? So don't give up on that. Other things that we can do is maybe add a bonus ingredient, right? So we can rotate the protein, right? Changing maybe one thing at a time is a good thing to look at, changing a variable, where when you start changing brands or different kinds of things, then we don't know what it was that he did or didn't like, right? And we might be introducing a new thing that creates some sort of inflammatory response or gut health issue or whatever that we're not in control of because we didn't even know which one was the trigger. So I'm all about sort of getting very structured about this and figuring out what works. Sometimes we just need a variance in the bowl. We might need a different protein. Sometimes we might need a surprise, right? So I will put things like kefir or yogurt. A little extra probiotic in my dog's bowl is not going to hurt him. You could do a little sauerkraut. You could do a little broccoli. You could do a couple of carrots, right? Any of those kind of little bonuses in the bowl make sense. And sometimes that's enough to get him going. One of the tricks I tried with Howie recently was I separated the meat from the mix. So normally I stir it all together. So one day I thought, well, let's see if it really is the mix, right? Let's see if it's just, the mix he's turning his nose up at. So I put his hamburger on one side of the bowl and the mix on the other side of the bowl. He ate all the meat first. He turned up his nose at the mix for a minute and then went back to it. So maybe it's kind of like those people who don't like their food to touch. I don't know. I don't know. What I'm saying to you is don't panic. Get a little creative. Throw some bonuses in the bowl. Change the schedule. Change the placement. Change the bowl. My mother thought if I gave it to him on a paper plate, that would make it better. That's not really a relevant thing. How he doesn't care. Some people will sit down and try to hand feed the dog. Like, please, you got to eat something. If they've truly gone off food, right? And to me, that is more than skipping one meal. That's like starting to skip multiple days of meals. Then I'm going to be certainly a lot more concerned. And I might offer them things like bone broth, at least something to get some nutrient in there. And of course, I'm going to be using my essential oils. I'd probably throw in a raindrop or two if my dog has completely gone off food, thinking maybe there's something that just doesn't feel good that we don't understand yet. Go to the vet if we need to. But don't panic just because your senior citizen went, I don't want that, right? We get that way sometimes too. Like, I call them food ruts. We get in a rut, and people, even with the NDF food or the AMPM or even the new rescue diet, they get in a rut, and it's like the same thing over and over and over and over. And we are so accustomed to that in the kibble feeding that it's the same bowl of food all the time. Fresh food gives us a lot of variety, right? Gives us a lot of variety in a lot of ways to sort of rearrange that food, change it up, make something different, and so on. Another thing to think about is there something going on maybe in their mouth, right? It may not be the food. It may be something about the eating process. So that's a consideration to take a look at. We're going to talk a little more about dental care over the next few days because that's been on my mind lately as well for my own seniors. But let's talk a little bit about heating up the food. So we get into this notion of raw food and everybody's like raw everything, right? Well, that's really not the case. Even with our veggies, we tend to want to steam them, give a fine chop to them if we're doing a homemade food, right? We don't just chop up a carrot and say, here. Let me rephrase that. We do as treats, and we often see carrot pooped out the back end, right? But when we're talking about broccoli and kale and asparagus and spinach and all those things, steam it, blanch it if you're from the South, and whir it through the food processor for a good chop, make enough for the week, and then scoop out what you need at each portion. We're going to warm that back up with either some hot water, or some people might pop it in the microwave for a minute, right? Dogs typically prefer food warm. A fresh kill is not going to be cold. It's not going to be straight out of the refrigerator, right? So when we have a dog that's sort of getting squirrely about their food, and it may even be the meat. So remember, I did the test with Howie, and he ate the meat, no trouble. Some dogs are actually going to start to prefer a light cook on their food for that meat to be really warm and, and heated. So when I'm stirring my bowl of food together, the hot water goes over everything. But some people may need a little light cook. Think rare. What's the issue with cooking meat? Think about it, right? What's the issue with cooking meat, and why do we say raw or a light cook? For meat, because of the fats and the constituent, the chemical makeup of meat, the more we cook it, the more carcinogens we introduce into the meat, right? So if you give your dog a well-cooked piece of steak or roast beef that's been cooked and cooked and cooked and cooked some more, most of the nutrient is cooked out of it, and we have started to create more carcinogens in that diet. You all know what carcinogens do in the body, right? So less cooking raw is better, but it doesn't mean we can't lightly cook, right? We don't have that same carcinogen effect in even a roasted veggie, because veggies don't carry the same level of fat. They don't carry fat, period, right? And when we add a fat like olive oil or coconut oil or safflower oil or whatever we might add on to that for the cooking process, it's not going to be the same as a rendered animal fat that starts to create a carcinogen. So we can roast our veggies and do a raw or a light cook on our meat, right? So all that comes together. So try those things for your dog. If Howie or Huey or even Poppy at any point say, I can't do NDF2 anymore, I will absolutely go to AM/PM. I've never felt that I had to do that with them yet, where it's much more customized. Or I would home cook. I don't love to do it. I don't like sourcing all those ingredients and cooking and chopping and all the stuff that comes with it. That is not my thing. But of course I would do that for my dog. I would do that for my dog before I did it for myself. So my point in all of this is, when your dog, especially a senior, is starting to look like, don't want to do that today, we need to look at multiple facets of pieces of the puzzle. Could it be an underlying health issue? Absolutely. Could it be that they've started to hate their dog food? Probably not. There's probably something going on where either they don't feel like eating, something has gotten a little out of balance and maybe needs some added support. Think digestive enzymes, probiotics, things that support the gut health, so that when all that rich nutrition is going in, it's actually absorbed and used properly by the body. Maybe they're bored. Maybe they need a variety of things to go in. Our dogs can actually, we often say that our dogs are, what's the word I'm looking for? Scavengers, right? That they'll eat anything. They'll eat everything. And that's not always true, right? They eat some pretty disgusting stuff. And if given the opportunity, they would go into trash. Given the opportunity, they would take care of roadkill, right? So they will eat some things that we think are pretty nasty. But they will also stop and say, that's not going to make me feel good. When I eat that, I don't like the way I feel, or I'm not getting the nutrient that I need, or my body feels not great when I eat those things, so I'm not going to eat that. There's an imprint kind of thing that takes place. It's better not try that again. And I liken that back to 100 years ago. I was on a bus trip, and we stopped at Hardee's for breakfast, and I got a biscuit. I don't know if it had steak or sausage or whatever in it, but I got a biscuit. And that was the most miserable bus trip I've ever been on. I was not well. I don't know if it was the bus or the food or the what, but let me tell you, I have never eaten another Hardee's biscuit in my life. Right? And it's the same kind of thing. Your dog knows. They know things that are good for them and things that are not. And they may get into a funk. It could just be a passing thing. It could be just a funk. It could be there needs to be something else in the bowl and kind of rotate and vary and change its temperature. It could be just as simple as that. So when I hear people talk about a finicky dog, I don't buy it. I fall into the category for healthy dogs. Healthy dogs. If they are not eating the food that we're giving them, right? Because even in the training world, when we're trying to create what's known as drive or motivation, we use food, and we might even withhold a meal, meaning we skip breakfast, get them hungry so that they're willing to work later, right? That they're motivated and driven to work for food. When we have a dog that's finicky and is like, I'm not eating, I'm not going to eat that, there is something going on. And it may not be it could be a health issue. I don't ever want to discount that. It could be a health issue. But it could be that they know what's in that bowl isn't something that makes them thrive, that makes them feel good. And so people will then question, well, he'll skip and then he'll go back a little later, like a day or two later, he'll get some. And then he'll skip and then he'll go back a day and get some more. Well, no dog's going to starve himself if the only thing we're giving them is they think is crap, right? They're going to eat enough to stay alive, but they may not be getting what they need to thrive. And that's the big difference. So I don't believe in finicky dogs when we have good, nutritious, fresh food for them, right? They're going to eat most everything. We have to evaluate whether the food we're giving them is the right food. And that even goes into back to this 5-element theory. Can my dog eat chicken? Probably not if they're highly allergic to a lot of things and they stay inflamed a lot. Dogs with aggression issues, I've learned we need to stay away from the most part from things like venison, bison, chicken, lamb, the things that Chinese medicine tells us are hot foods, right? So it's about starting to put those pieces of the puzzle together and figure out what ought to be in the bowl. And when it's right, then your dog's going to eat it, unless there's really some underlying health issue going on. And then we're back to figuring out the right nutrition, because 99.9% of everything starts with nutrition to get the health issues under control. So I hope this has been a little bit helpful. I feel like I rambled just a little bit, but hope it's helpful. And if you have questions, let me know. When I'm doing these Facebook Lives, I am actually not even on a screen right now where I can see the questions, but I'll come back and review them later and answer questions if you have them. Talk to you soon.